Hello, nerd herd. That brings me joy, so I'm going to start with that one. All right, today I wanted to talk about meditation in the struggle. Just give us a radical history of resilience instead of the more corporatized version that we normally see. This talk tonight is meant to be an antidote to despair. So, lately, and so I've been working on this for a couple months. Sorry, I don't have any images to share with this video. It's just going to be my avatar on screen. I started to climb into my head with all of the different images that I should or have to include, and then I just kept putting it off. So we're just going to go live with this because I don't want to keep putting this off. I feel like this conversation is very important. So, lately, I've been struggling with the world being on fire. We have wars, we have injustice, we have climate collapse from Gaza to Sudan to the Amazon. And sometimes sitting down to meditate feels impossible. It's sort of like why I focus on the breath when everything is falling apart globally. Then I started to think about how meditation has helped me feel stronger internally, how meditation has helped me push back on long held beliefs and patterns and cycles that I would repeat endlessly that felt absolutely exhausting. So I started to look a little bit more at meditation's history. Not the history that is easy to find because none of this information was really easy to find. Part of why I didn't have any of the um, sources that I wanted to have with me on this. So the bottom line for this is that this wasn't really done for peace or privilege. This was done out of a sense that if I feel emboldened, if I feel empowered by the very act of meditation, there has to be more to that, right? It can't just be me. That just doesn't seem possible. Well, that's true. Turns out that meditation has been a tool for revolutionaries, activists, and just everyday people fighting to survive. Now, like me, you probably have heard meditation pitched as a way to escape the world's problems and manifest a perfect life. Ah. And then when everything feels like it's falling apart, this presentation feels hollow and insulting, right? It doesn't feel authentic or pertinent in any way. So, this framing that it's just about this perfect life and peacefully meditating on a mountain, nothing touches me. Well, this is a modern version. And this conveniently forgets to tell us that this is a recent invention. For most of human history, meditation wasn't a retreat from the struggle, it was a vital tool for surviving it. It was forged not from personal gain or privilege, but for collective resilience. So I want to pause here and say this isn't about using meditation to ignore the pain of the world or pretend everything's okay. It's not. It's not. And there's a monsoon of pain. This is not about gurus or pedestals. This is not about claiming enlightenment while others are suffering. This talk is about how ordinary people, us right here, right now, have used these practices to stay grounded, clear-eyed, fully present, and connected in the midst of the fight. Considering everything that's going on right now, I felt like this was a really good time to just talk about this, put this out there so that anyone else that's feeling like this knows you are not alone. So let's go ahead and kick off this journey through the radical history of meditation throughout times of struggle. Now, this is an overview, so this is not meant to be comprehensive. If you guys want a more comprehensive breakdown of the topics we'll be touching on, please let me know. I'd be happy to add those in at some point as well. I wanted this to be a reminder, as an overview again, that no one owns mindfulness. No one. Meditation is not owned for or by anyone. It is not a one size fits all. It is not one packaging only. And there is no struggle too small or too large for this practice to matter, elevate, or help within. Okay, so let's kick it off with ancient roots. Meditation as rebellion. So going way back, most people are thinking of meditation as a solitary, serene practice, but it wasn't always. Now, my point of reference is exactly that: serene, solitary practice, right? Yeah, you can be in a group, true, but you're still trying to break down all those inner walls, right? It's not necessarily out into the broader collective. However, in ancient India, ascetics, I always mispronounce that. Sorry. Feel free to correct me in the notes, in the comments rather, because I always mispronounce that. My sincere apologies. Meditation was not for, so in ancient India, meditation was not just for enlightenment. It was also to resist oppressive social structures. Buddha himself sat in defiance of the rigid caste system, which is still currently a thing, not just in India, America. We have our own version of the caste system, so let's keep that crystal clear as well. Teachings of meditation that were to help us awaken, they were not just for the elites, it was for everyone. In China, Taoist hermits used, okay, Taoist hermits, if I can get my teeth around what I've put in my notes here, use meditation to cultivate resilience against political turmoil, not to escape it, not to absolve themselves of any real connection to it or to their people or the suffering, etc., etc. It was to help them cultivate resilience in order to stand with their people. Now, even Stoics like Marcus Aurelius practiced mindfulness. You probably have heard of some of the ways that he did that in leading Rome through war and plague, not to transform or to transcend suffering, but to face it with clarity. Now, I do also want to stop here and call out, these are, again, this is not comprehensive. This is not to gloss over all of the horrendous things that are associated with these different time periods, these people individually. Okay, this is not to gloss over any of this. My main point here is to show the through line meditation has had throughout history. Okay, again, this is not about whether or not that meditative practice, however that showed up, whether or not it was corrupted. That's another separate conversation we could have. I would be happy to have that conversation as well. This is to highlight that through all of this, there has been a form of meditation helping us stay grounded, helping us remain focused, helping us stay connected to ourselves, to each other, to our communities, to our planet, right? To help us continue to stand up for each other. Okay, that's my point here, is to show that through line of meditation being present through it all, not to diminish any of the suffering associated with different time periods or people. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. A couple of other things I wanted to highlight because these weren't really known to me. The first one was were early Christian desert fathers and mothers. They withdrew and practiced contemplative prayer, not only for personal salvation, but as a radical alternative to the corruption and materialism of the Roman Empire, which was a form of social protest. And then I would also like to point out my opinion of meditation, my view of meditation includes prayer. My view of meditation is pretty simple. That which brings you to full presence is a meditative practice in and of itself. So if you're washing the dishes and you are perfectly present in that moment, that is an act of meditation. That's my description of meditation, just to clarify, in case anyone was wondering. Also, Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah, the Merkava, my apologies if I mispronounced that. These were practices of divine meditation and ascent were often pursued in context of exile and political subjugation, seeking connection and meaning beyond earthly rulers or exile, subjugation. So it was to ascend beyond the current confinement. These practices weren't about gatekeeping enlightenment, they were about shared survival, which again is a common thread, a common theme of meditation being present throughout our history. Now, part two is the hidden histories, forgotten movements. So we're going to fast forward just a little bit. We're going to talk about, we're going to touch briefly on these. So enslaved people in the Americas used rhythmic breathing and spiritual practices to endure brutality and secretly organize rebellion. One of those things I want to call out with the rhythmic breathing, the Black Panthers had a part in their, okay, I can't obviously prove this. This is just what I read, and now I don't have that source with me, so please take this with a grain of salt. Black Panthers had a breathing exercise that they had in their manuals to help people control their breathing while they were being tear gassed. So this is, I mean, meditation has literally helped us survive, us being obviously humanity. I'm not trying to claim credit for anyone or any practice. While not always called meditation, again, I've clarified my point on how I see meditation or meditative practices. The role of spirituals, ring shouts, and coded songs involved, again, rhythmic breathing, call and response, and trance-like states to preserve sanity. Again, being tear gassed is not something easy. Being brutally beaten is not something that's easy. Constantly living under a state of duress, again, not easy. It also was to communicate secretly and to build communal resilience. Indigenous resistance movements worldwide have long incorporated meditation-like rituals to stay grounded in their fight for land and dignity. Sufi mystics meditated under persecution, not to avoid the politics, but to sustain their defiance. And then something, I do call this out later, but I do want to tie this in since we're speaking about Indigenous resistance. Not really sure how I broke this up or why I broke it up this way. The point is that Standing Rock also has breathing techniques and spiritual techniques directly tied to the land that helped them fight against that oil pipeline that governments were trying to force onto the people, right? So that's another way to use it because, staying connected to our land is a hugely meditative practice or can be, and it's vital to our way of life. So something else I wanted to call out was the Australian Aboriginal cultures and their use of Dadiri. Again, my apologies for any mispronunciations. Please drop a comment in to correct me on any mispronunciations. This is a deep contemplative and silent mindfulness based on listening to country. So again, here we have a stop and a pause to where we're listening to not just land, but country as a whole. I don't know how more broad of a meditative practice you can get other than the ones where we reflect on humanity. That's a pretty profound and incredible meditative mindfulness practice that I had never heard of. So I wanted to include it. And then the Dadiri, this practice had been or has been fundamental to sustaining culture and resistance through centuries of colonization. And I know that, let me see if I can find that. I don't think I included it. Give me one more moment. Because I know that there was another practice. I meant to include it. I must have had it in my old outline and it's not in there anymore. Sorry guys, give me just 1 second. Samud, okay. So because I wanted to kind of bring these together, speaking of centuries, well, it's not a century of colonization, but Palestinians also have a similar connection to their land called Samud or steadfastness. Now, this is a much broader practice. I'm not trying to say I'm an expert in that. I just had read about that, and like I said, I had it in my other outline. Apparently, I removed it from this one. Um, but their connection to land, Samud, again, steadfastness for the Palestinians, that's also a form of mindfulness, meditative practice in their struggle against the oppression that they have been suffering. Now, I'm not saying any of this to romanticize struggle. It's none of this is romantic. None of this is okay. None of this is acceptable. Okay, the point of this is to remind us that meditation wasn't born in luxury retreats. It's been co-opted to present it as something that's meant to dilute our inherent resilience, our inherent strength, our inherent connection to one another. Meditation's been forged in the fires of resilience by people who refuse to let their minds be colonized even when their bodies were. And that's kind of the through line here, right? Is that's what I wanted to point out, is how just incredibly important meditation is when so much of the world is collapsing. Our meditative practice is vital in those moments, not just for us to stay connected to our authentic self and our own humanity, but to ensure that we're staying connected to the humanity of those around us, so that we're continuing to stay connected to each other, to our planet, which is just as unspeakably precious as all of us are. All right, so the part three, modern movements. Let's go a little bit beyond the icons here, though. So while we are familiar with MLK and Gandhi, there are unnamed protesters who meditated before sit-ins to steady their nerves. As I alluded to earlier, or spoke to directly rather, the Black Panthers and the mindfulness breathing practices that they had within their manuals to help them ensure that they could breathe when they were being attacked. There are Tibetan monks who turned mindfulness into a form of political resistance. And then again, I think um, yeah, I forgot to say this. Sorry, I was more interested in the breathing techniques because that never occurred to me. So I kind of got stuck on that. Black Panthers obviously also studied meditation to help them handle the police harassment without losing focus. And then again, just to reiterate, again, currently groups like Standing Rock, the Water Protectors, we also have Hong Kong protesters using breathwork to stay calm, also under tear gas. And then the anti-apartheid movement, figures like Nelson Mandela spoke of using meditation and visualization to maintain mental resilience during his 27 years in prison. We have the Extinction Rebellion activists. They explicitly incorporate mindfulness and well-being circles into their training for nonviolent direct action to handle the emotional toil of the crisis of our planet being under attack, basically, and the stress of protesting in general. It's not like protesting is this easy little, gathering where it's dangerous. I also wanted to call out the LGBTQIA plus rights movements. Their mindfulness and community grounding practices have been used to manage the trauma of the AIDS crisis, fight for marriage equality, and foster resilience in the face of discrimination, which, as we're unfortunately seeing, is now replenishing itself and kicking off yet again. Okay, so bottom line here, this isn't about quote unquote winning through some mystical vibe shift. We're not gonna, vibrate higher our way out of this, right? And again, if that's one of your mantras, vibrate higher, I also like that. Mine preferred is vibrate up or vibrate out. I like that. That, first of all, it brings a sense of humor. It helps me take myself less seriously. I'm not trying to diminish that mantra for you. I do not mean, this is not a judgment of you or your practice. This is a frustration with the corporatization and the co-opting of this incredibly vital living organism of a program we know as meditation. That's where the frustration is coming from, and that's where I mean to direct it. This is also about remembering our ancestors have already woven these practices into the fabric of resistance, and we can too. So, next time you feel guilty, if you're handling things like I am, where guilt comes in when it's time to meditate, because the world is burning around us, Please remember that these practices, your practice, my practice, all of our practices, while they may not be identical to how others have practiced throughout the centuries of meditation, helping us remain grounded to within ourselves and to our communities, they still help us fuel continuing to move forward, continuing to get up every day, right? While we stay anchored and fortified in the spirit of change, which obviously can be massively challenging to say the least. Okay, so this is not about checking out, it's about staying in the fight without burning out, because that is just as important. And it's not about gurus or achieving some perfect state, right? It's about coming back to ourselves and to each other. It's a way of, checking ourselves. Okay, am I following my authentic guidance? Am I following my intuition? Am I honoring myself, my family, my friends, my loved ones, my communities, or am I honoring, what I'm being told is the quote unquote right thing to do, but feels wrong inside, right? It's just a reminder that we check in on ourselves, that we check ourselves and make sure that we are still honoring our authentic selves, not some other voice that's told us that we have to do, be, or accept a certain this or that. So, just to reiterate again, because I do care about how all of you are doing, if you're still struggling, know that sitting with your breath isn't surrender. It is not giving in. It is not giving up. It's preparation. And you don't need anybody's permission slip, including me. But I do want us to keep going together. However that looks for you, however that starts to unfold and shape for me. I'm not super thrilled about that, but that's fine. That's why I meditate. So I do want to take a couple moments here while we're still together. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to reflect on how meditation has helped you in a struggle in your own life. So I just want you to sit with that for a moment, and I want you to think about how meditation has helped you in any type of struggle that's shown up. And as I said at the beginning, for me, it was helping to stop the cycles that I kept repeating. It's helped me reframe the way I see myself. It's helped me be stronger, more courageous. I would never have been sitting here doing this, talking about this specific subject or bringing up any of these examples if I didn't meditate. I wouldn't be here right now. So just take a couple moments to reflect on your meditative practice, and you can do it as a timeline, how you felt when you started, just kind of, take an overview of how it's looked throughout to this point. It can be one specific struggle where you were like, that was the one that finally broke through. I have one of those. Mine was actually, it was a yoga class, my first Kundalini yoga class, and we were standing in tree pose, and I was getting angrier and angrier the tighter my muscles got, and the harder it became, the more burning sensations happened in my muscles, and it all just kind of broke inside. It was like something just snapped on the inside. I stayed in the pose, and I've never felt so proud of myself for just letting all of it unravel while still staying within. Doesn't sound like much, but in the moment it was pretty massive. So what's one of yours? I'll be silent now while you reflect. Keep your breathing nice and deep. And we'll just be here for a couple more breaths. And if there's anything coming up that wants to shift, that wants you to try something new, please honor that. Your meditative practice should be organic. It should change and grow and adapt as you do. That's the whole purpose. So give that celebratory woohoo! I made it. I did it, whatever that was. And also my authentic voice is asking me to do something here, so let's go ahead and shift and give it a try. So I think reflecting on our meditative process, where we're at, checking in on if there's any updates that are needed, that's part of a healthy meditative process as well. I know that's, well, I should say for me, that wasn't really commonly talked about. It was you do the 40 days and then you you move on, right? You do whatever number you've set for yourself and you just keep going. Yeah, you can have a journal and write down how you're doing day to day. There wasn't really a connective tissue of, well, take stock. Is there something that's asking you to shift? Not until I started working with Gloria Latham. She very much brings that in and is like, okay, well, if there's something that needs to shift, you listen to that, right? Honor that. Do your best to heed that advice from where you are to the fullest extent that you can. So if this resonated with you, feel free to drop your story in the comments as well. What worked, what didn't, if you felt there was something that should have been spoken about that wasn't, if there's something you'd like me to go deeper on, feel free to shout that out in the comments. And if you disagree with me bringing this up, feel free to shout out why you don't think this should be talked about. I feel like this is a very important part of meditation's history, along with shady gurus, right? I don't think it benefits any of us who really love meditation to pretend that these aspects aren't also part of meditation's history, along with the new corporatized stuff that I completely disagree with. I think that it's just completely neutering is the only word I can think of, and that's not the one I want. It's just robbing it of all the color. It's stealing the actual essence of meditation. Meditation is not solely for productivity for a corporation. It's not solely for the packaging that corporations give it. Throw out meditation like it's just some new, treat. It's work, it's dedication, it's also raw, it's also emotional, it's messy, it can be infuriating, it can be discombobulating, right? These are all aspects of meditation, and I personally feel more empowered having learned these different parts of history and how others have used meditation in world situations, and it also saved their life like it saved mine. I find that empowering. I find that important history that just isn't shared. So I thought I would shout this out. Again, I plan to have more images when I did this, but then I climbed into my head and it was just another reason to put it off. And I'm tired of putting this off. This is a prescient conversation given the state of the world. And I wanted to offer a shout out to anyone else who is struggling with this. Your meditative practice is not the problem, the systems are the issue. So please continue with your meditative practice. I am so grateful that you joined me for this conversation. Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments, and feel free to drop in the comments how meditation has helped you in the struggle. Maybe it will help someone else, or it will illuminate a different way for someone else to branch out with their own meditative practice. So thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time. Oh, I wanted to add thrive in my absence because it brings me joy and humor. So take care of yourselves. See you next time.